Hello, I'm Dr. Katherine Horton. This is now the third episode in this series of fighting psychopathic systems. In the very first episode, I explained what psychopathic systems are, what methods one can use. In the second episode, I also explained that essentially what we're doing is a big Nazi hunt. We are now we are now on the offensive. We essentially have large systems utterly out of control, destroying the lives of thousands, if not millions, utterly devastating countries, and it's all to do with deep capture by clinical psychopaths. Essentially, we also have the situation whereby people, especially the victims of the intelligence agencies like myself, are essentially systematically mutilated with nanotechnology, with electromagnetic weapons. They are systematically enslaved, systematically have their lives destroyed. And all this is essentially due to a group of highly networked, highly degenerate, severely mentally ill people at the top, who are essentially clinical psychopaths and utterly out of control. So what we're doing now is we are now cycling the systems, we are recapturing the systems, and we're fighting these clinical psychopaths. We're cycling the system overall, and we're cycling to more sustainable systems that are, for the first time in history, actually resilient. They will be resilient against deep capture by clinical psychopaths. So that's the plan. I am on the team that works on the system cycle. I'm also a victim myself. And what I'm essentially working on is trying to help other victims in my situation and fighting the utter degeneracy in our systems. So today I would like to talk about actual nuts and bolts of concrete examples of what we're dealing with and how to fight this and how to fight it more systematically. So the very first episode about fighting psychopathic systems was the general tools that we're going to use. That's the rough area. The second one was essentially the general appeal, making clear that this is a war against the clinical psychopaths who are trying to kill us. They are fighting with real weapons. I'm not using any violence whatsoever. I never shall. I'm fighting in a sense with ideas, with the power of mathematics and with better systems. So this is it. This is now we're essentially in this episode we're down to the actual nuts and bolts now. How exactly are we going to do that? I already put out videos about how to help the victims. We are cycling the system back. We're going back to the rule of law. And this is going to happen across many systems, because essentially it's not that just the intelligence agencies that seem to be in deep capture. It is also many other systems alongside. I mean, finance is one obvious example, but there are many, many others like that. And in every system, one can cycle back to the rule of law. One can get rid of what I call the weaponized morons. One can hone in on the actual clinical psychopaths and essentially take care of them systematically. And this is what we're doing. Now I want to talk about actual concrete things. And in this video, like in the previous videos, I shall also use utter disrespect for these psychopathic systems. So I will use careless language to absolutely make clear my utter disdain for these sort of systems. And if you're sensitive to that, well, you shouldn't be watching these sort of videos anyway, because it's about the ultimate battle and death and mutilation. So, maybe there are some happy kitten videos out there for you on YouTube. So for all the others who are in this war, I want to jump in at the deep end today, and I want to talk about the actual mutilation that's being done to the victims of the intelligence agencies. And I want to essentially, first of all, make clear what we're dealing with there. I mean, I'm a victim myself. I've experienced part of what's being done. It is essentially a mix of using electromagnetic weapons, using also what's called neuroweaponry. So this is essentially electromagnetic weapons particularly targeted at the brain, at trying to disrupt, destroy, denigrate the human brain using electromagnetic weapons. It's also to do with nanotechnology, as far as I can tell. It's to do with the entire palette, with probably also loaded viruses, miscellaneous things that can be done. And we essentially have a large group of victims numbering in the many, many thousands across the world, but also in all European countries and all the countries that I'm in. And on the other hand, we have the intelligence agencies essentially infecting people, breaking into their homes, poisoning their food, testing gases, miscellaneous poisons on them by just pumping them into their home, using their surveillance networks and the staggeringly large numbers of members in their surveillance networks to round on individuals who cannot defend themselves or don't have the means to defend themselves or are vulnerable, and essentially forcing death camp experiments onto these people in their own environment. What we essentially have is the death camp experiments that were done by the Nazis in the death camps now being conducted on individuals in our society using the force of the intelligence agencies to pull this off. On top of that, these are the actual key core experiments. Essentially, this is junk science, what's being done. But anyway, the fact that the science is utterly degenerate and totally worthless has never deterred anybody. So this is what's being done. But on top of that, the intelligence agencies are running terror campaigns against the victims to intimidate them, to isolate them, to prevent them from coming forward. Right, and this is done with COINTELPRO style psychological terrorism, with real life terrorism, with death, in my case, death threats, assassination attempts, and so on, with applying weapons on them to torture them, to mutilate them even harder, attacks against the family, health attacks, degrading people's health, and so on. All that is being done live, and everything I said is also being done to me and my family. So this is what we're dealing with, and what we essentially have is where the hell does it come from? If you're new to this topic, you might think, what is all this about? Well, to get you up to speed, it's quite simple. If you think back throughout history, not that long ago, right, we had the Second World War, well, which might seem a long time ago, but in actual human terms, it really isn't. So what we had in the Second World War was essentially network clinical psychopaths running amok and killing millions of people. After that, we had essentially the communists doing the same thing, and the communist systems ran until 1989, so that's not really that long ago. Now, the communists were not out murdering millions all the way until 89, but they did always murder some, right? And it turns out that the intelligence agencies have never stopped murdering people. That's their job, essentially. That's why they're secret. It's because they're criminal. And essentially what has happened now is with the explosion in size of the intelligence agencies, the murdering has exploded in size too. It's not just the murdering, it's also the maiming. And in all this maiming and murdering, there's obviously a large amount of sadism. And the sadism, and sometimes also unnecessary sadism, is also an ingredient. So what we're dealing with now is essentially large-scale maiming and murdering programs out of control being conducted mainly by the intelligence agencies. Yeah, so is that surprising? Not really, because if you look back throughout history, I don't think there was ever in the history of mankind an instance where people opened the archives of an intelligence agency by force or by leaks or by chance and thought, oh my God, these people have been doing really valuable work that literally we really needed in our society, and thank goodness we have these intelligence agencies. No, I don't think that has ever happened ever before. When you actually looked at the files of the intelligence agencies in large numbers, most of the time it was essentially oh my God sort of moments, and most of the time it was essentially just a degenerate freak show that was uncovered by that. And that's the same in every country, in every single country. I don't even have to mention Germany, but there are the Stasi archives. There is what the Gestapo did, but the same also applies to MI6, to MI5. The same applies to any other Latin American or American intelligence agency or anywhere in Asia. And the reasons for that are pretty obvious. It's because you're dealing with secret services, so criminal services to start with, so whatever they will produce will be criminal. There we are. The problem is now that these agencies have become so vast that their criminal activities are taking down entire governments, which, by the way, in my personal view, is the plan. In my view, we're dealing with controlled demolitions of our societies. Okay, right, so that's what we're dealing with. People in the West are being systematically maimed and murdered, as far as I can tell, by the intelligence agencies, and I'm one of them. Now, what a lot of the victims of the intelligence agencies are told, there are different ways that they are told. One method is what's called voice to skull. We're still figuring, or I personally am still figuring out how they're doing this. I think some people have implants, and the implants pick up essentially voice transmissions. Other people might have these sounds just beamed directly to their heads. We're still investigating, as civilians, how exactly this is being done. But one of the things that's pretty clear, it's being done and has been done for decades on a very large number of people. And the entire idea was to take innocent people, hardworking people, as far as I can tell, and essentially just destroy their life for the sake of a rather cockeyed experiment, if you can call it an experiment. But it's just systematic, sadistic mutilation, in my view. Okay, now, what I said was that people are being told, the victims of the intelligence agencies are being told, sometimes through voice to skull, sometimes by agents to their face, that they don't matter, that it's all about the data that's being collected on their bodies, on their brain functions, their brain prints, and so on and so on. Now, this is as psychopathic as you can possibly get, because essentially what these agents are doing to the victims is dehumanize them, like the Nazis did. But these guys are Nazis, so it's not really surprising. That's why we're hunting them down, because they're a bunch of fucking Nazis. But then, how the hell to fight it? When all these victims are being told it's not even about you, we don't care about you, you're essentially just a lump of meat. It's, for us, it's all about the data. Well, I can tell you how you can fight it. They just said it themselves. It's all about the data. And the absolute beautiful thing is that, in a sense, it comes back to what possibly the most famous investigator in all history has said, and that's Sherlock Holmes. And at some point, I think he made the point that if you have, the mundane crimes are the hardest to solve, because they are just so, it could be anything, But the more bizarre the crime, the bizarreness encodes a lot of clues about what the hell's going on. When you look at the victims of the intelligence agencies, what's being done to them is bizarre in the extreme, in the sense that it is a total frickin' freak show, but it's also extremely unusual. That's why most people can't really handle it. It's using a novel technology, unusual things are being done to them, and the entire thing is essentially the very definition of bizarre, meaning highly, highly disconcerting and unusual, but most importantly unusual. Now, if you have that, it's a gold mine, because the sheer unusualness will encode a vast amount of information. In a sense, the hardest thing is when there's absolutely nothing specific about the person, and one day they're just shot dead, randomly, with a bullet that can't be traced to a gun. Go figure. There's probably no way to find out what happened, why it happened, who did it, and it's just... But when you're dealing with something like that, there are clues everywhere. And essentially, what these idiot psychopathic degenerates don't understand is that by pulling off, the more freakish and weird the Muppet Show is that they're pulling off, the more clues are encoded in the entire Muppet Show itself. So they are absolutely right. It is about the data. It is very much about the data, also for us, for those people who are investigating this and essentially trying to get at the psychopaths. To give you an example, absolutely everything these degenerates are doing is a two-way street. So if you're a victim and you're experiencing gang stalking, it's a two-way street. Because on one hand, they are trying to terrorize you, or maybe they're trying to breed out your brain signature and your brain response to certain things. But whilst you're in it, you're also essentially mapping the system. You can take photographs of their faces. With that, we can, soon enough, we'll be able to trace the people straight away, either by their mugshot or by their voice print. That will be available to you very soon. I'll predict that now. But on top of that, as soon as we have the people, There will be financial flows to them, right? Paying for their services. Not just that, these people are leaking data everywhere. They're using mobile phones, they're communicating via mobile phones, they're using an app, and yes, sure, maybe these things are currently handled by the intelligence agencies, but nevertheless, they are piggybacking on a big communication system that has an entire chain, a concatenation of modules or parts to it. The mobile phone traffic to the antenna, to the actual tower, from the tower to satellites, from satellite systems back to central points, and so on and so on. At every single stage, the amount of data generated, secondary data, is stupendous. So what we essentially have is the perpetrators leaking data everywhere. And as soon as you have one victim, you can trace that back. If you know what you're looking for, you have the entire system mapped out. So, my dear perpetrators, what you're essentially doing is you're generating data about yourself, but no one told you that much. And also, should you be somebody who owns maybe in integrated, systems of the satellites, maybe because you own a private company, well, there's also cell towers, there's also local data, there's also data that can essentially be intercepted, and so on and so on. And it is being intercepted. And it is being intercepted, it is being warehoused, as we know, through the leaks now. And essentially there are double copies and leaks and data streams going absolutely everywhere, non-stop, 24/7. If you wanted to erase this torrent of data, you would have a very hard time erasing every last bit. And should you start to erase it, the erasing leaves traces as well, because there will essentially be blank spaces. There will be gaps in information. So you would have to, if you don't want it to show up, you'd have to generate garbage data to then cover the gaps, to fill the gaps. But as soon as you generate that, that will throw up inconsistencies, and so on and so on. So in such a highly complex system, that's what I keep saying to people, in such a highly complex system, you cannot censor, you cannot erase and keep the erasing, the censoring secret for very long. It is mathematically impossible. There's a fundamental limitation on this, arising out of the complexity and the handles you have on this in an unpredictable way. So, the actual good news is that every single time, now that we know who the victims are and we've identified the victims, working backwards from them and finding out which bits are captured, who is doing this, is essentially surprisingly easy. It is very easy. And then on top of that, it's essentially, how to put it? It's now at the moment it seems hard because the major systems are in deep capture, but what this ignores is that deep capture is never complete. It never captures an organization entirely. This would be essentially the equivalent of turning everybody inside an organization into a psychopath just because the boss is a psychopath. This is impossible because the boss typically doesn't even interact with a lot of the other people. So there are always domains within an organization that are not captured, that cannot be controlled, again because of fundamental physical and mathematical limitations, because for few people to control the many is very, very hard, and to control them all the time is very hard. So what we actually have is perfectly functioning systems interlaced with the deep capture. Now those systems here, some of them are already working flat out to uncover the deep capture. That's the thing. So it's never perfect. It's never perfect. And as you know, you only need one, in a sense, a good person inside an organization like that is essentially a mole, right? If you want to capture something and you've got somebody who's normal, that's a mole, that's a lect, it's a hole in your system. So you have small holes and big fat holes in these captured systems. But the key point is, it is about the data. It is about the data. That is just what is so beautiful about this. And for example, to give you a concrete example why it's all about the data, and oh God, I'm absolutely loving it. Because if you're somebody like me and you go public, you come forward and you go public with I'm a victim, and you start talking about it, and you start, maybe even saying we should have court cases, we should really have these things shut down. what happens, because the entire intelligence agencies are still in the old paradigm where they are still in the whack the mole, you know, or whack the, you know, the rat sort of setup, where anybody who goes up against them starts being whacked over the head by armies, and I really mean armies, of bloody little degenerate in the head agents and their minions. Okay, and this is priceless, because if you're like a victim like myself, you essentially attract these people. They will come to you. I don't even have to go out and look for them. I don't have to go and look for agents. They come to me. I am an agent magnet, and that's a gold mine. Because just look at my YouTube videos, and now look down at the descriptions. Look at the comment section, not the descriptions, I mean the comment section. Look down there. Already you have a huge number of agents' accounts posting by their own volition. They came forward by their own volition, by their own doing. Isn't that beautiful? Do you see? Because it is about the data. It's exactly about the data. It's about the data that they generate about themselves. Because we're now on this phase where we are rolling it up. So any agent posting to my site or any other victim site walks straight into the trap. It's that simple. Beautiful. So, to put it into context, the reason why this really matters the earth is because a lot of these agents' accounts are very, very obvious. For example, on my Twitter feed, I already called out several where I posted what I call spot the bot. And essentially the spot the bots are very obvious examples of computer bots posting, for example, the same thing over and over on 10 different videos of mine within a very short time, essentially at machine speed, not human speed. Now, those are bots. And as soon as we have the bot accounts, well, tracing back who owns the bots is not that difficult. Okay. Most of the time you'll end up with, you know, somebody at an intelligence agency, fair enough, or somebody, you know, I mean, the intelligence agencies are on our radar anyway. But sometimes it might also be a private company, and so on and so on. So you have all this data already there, and the beautiful thing is, it's already inscribed. It's already backed up. It has already been duplicated. From the actual pattern that the posts have been made, it's already clear which the bot accounts are. Then there are a lot of agent accounts which, you know, try to emulate actual normal victims, and those you can pick up as well. They have got different features and so on. But the point is that in this case now, in this phase where we're onto the Nazi hunt, the victims don't have anything to fear, because we're trying to get through to the victims to help them, right? So what we're doing now is reaching out to the victims for genuine help. It's like liberating the people from the concentration camps. The people putting out help messages, genuine victims, don't have anything to fear. We want to hear from them to know where to look, right? The hard bit is when you don't know where the victims are. You don't know where to look. This is why victims have to come forward. They have to start generating their data about themselves. They have to start putting out information about themselves of what offenses have been committed, who committed them. And it doesn't matter where you put out this information. That's the beauty of it. Because what do we have these days? We have, and the intelligence agencies have built it up themselves, these idiots. They essentially have this very large surveillance network. It is now much more extensive than the Stasi has ever been. When the Stasi was the Stasi, they seemed very powerful. But when it flipped, suddenly the Stasi panicked and they started shredding their files, because suddenly holding this information when someone else is going to use it against you was a really dangerous thing to do. And now we have exactly the same thing. We essentially had the Stasi warehousing, and it's still happening, it's still ongoing. Essentially these degenerate psychopaths warehousing data streams so fantastically large, it's unbelievable. Meanwhile, private companies doing their own backup for, you know, legal reasons and safety reasons and to maintain their systems. Now, the amount of data generated is so complex and so vast that to go through and try to do the same thing that the Stasi did with the Stasi archives is impossible. I'm sorry. It's just impossible. And there are all these backup copies of backup copies being generated everywhere. So the absolute beauty of it is that no matter what these guys are doing, it's already out there. Now, if you're a victim, what you can do is you can either tweet it, make it public, so you send information about yourself, you send your distress calls, either publicly through YouTube channels like I did, YouTube videos, or through Twitter publicly, or else, and that's the beauty of it, because we know the intelligence agencies also hoover up all the private communication, you can do the same thing through private messages on Facebook, private messages on Twitter, private messages through any other platform, and even emails. Because as soon as you send an email, there's an entire host of organizations hoovering it up and making backup copies. Sometimes for genuine backup purposes, to be able to, restore your email should the server fail. There are several backup copies for that. Then we've got the intelligence agencies hoovering off the data, and not just one intelligence agency, but many essentially doing the same thing, and then stealing through the back door data from other intelligence agencies. We've got these round robins going senselessly everywhere. But through that process, if you send an email, your data is going to be flicked like dirt everywhere. It just goes pfft. Now, erasing that is impossible. So, should anything happen to you as a victim, do not fear, because we're now rounding this up, right? We're now getting back, and it's going to accelerate. So at the moment you don't see, because all this stuff is happening behind the scenes. But this is where we're going now. We are liberating the people in the concentration camps. Essentially what has happened, I mean, we should have wondered, after the Stasi was shut down in 1989, we should have wondered, okay, but where did all those fucked in the head degenerates go? And we didn't really ask ourselves this question. Well, the thing is, they are still alive, they're alive and kicking and doing what they've always done. The same degenerate Stasi bullshit. Exactly the same. And the same applies to any other intelligence agency in the world. They do same old, like a bunch of degenerate morons, which is what they are. Right? So it's not really surprising when this, but the other good news is that a lot of the people, the degenerates at the head, like in every organization, they are of a certain age, and they're not exactly the most technically versed people in all cases. In other words, I don't think they could reinstall the operating system on their phone to save their life, to be absolutely honest. The people who actually do the technical stuff are, those people who in their eyes are essentially the grunts, right? But those are the people who are actually on the cutting edge, looking at key databases, like with the data up close to their nose. Those people tend to be younger, technically versed, and quite characteristically, phenomenally screwed by these psychopaths, either because they've got enormous amounts of student debts through the financial terrorism that has been imposed on an entire generation, or for other reasons as well, to do with the financial crisis or whatnot, vaccines, you name it. There was so much psychopathic nonsense. But the young generation is essentially the generation that gets shit done, that is versed in this technology, and that's at the same time also the most screwed generation of them all. And that's a bad mix. And in this case, we're talking about data. So whoever handles the data has the power. Do you see? Do you see? Do you begin to see what I'm trying to tell you here? And the other very important ingredient is essentially that crimes against humanity do not have a limitation period. So when we start rolling stuff up, we can go back in time very far indeed. And that's what we're doing. So essentially, what every single victim actually is a trap for these agents. It's a trap they walk in gladly, because that's their job. It is their job to harass these people. It is their job to post bullshit to their accounts. It is their job to sabotage their digital communications. But by doing so, they are leaving traces. And essentially, the final word will be with the people who are rolling this up. And that's when the symmetry breaks. So in physics, we're dealing with broken symmetries quite a lot, because you get a lot of interesting effects when symmetries are breaking. Now here, the symmetry breaks when you're starting to roll this back. As soon as you start rolling stuff up publicly, you make stuff transparent, there's a symmetry breaking. Before, when everything is secret, nasty criminal stuff can be done exactly at the same cost as normal stuff. But the nasty criminal stuff pays more, and therefore it is more, essentially it pays more to do criminal stuff when everything is secret. Now when you're opening up this box, and the vast majority of people are not clinical psychopaths, and the vast majority of people are very screwed indeed by the psychopathic nonsense, the symmetry breaks. Suddenly there's a very high cost associated to criminal bullshit, because it immediately turns the herd onto yourself. You immediately become the target. You immediately become the most hated element. So, forever after, and remember, because of the lack of limitation period, we've got all the time in the world to roll this up. Because of that, as soon as we start getting back at the data, right, that's when the symmetry breaks. And when this is done in a public way, or, well, it could be done through hacks, because as I said, these systems are very, very complex indeed, right? They are so many different companies and so many different platforms and so many like programming languages and interfaces. And as we know, as soon as you interface, that's when the problems arise, and that's when you can really hack stuff. And well, I think it's just leaking, everywhere, isn't it? So this is it. It's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. And if you want to get onto, have a bit of fun in the Nazi hunt, you can already start doing that with public information. You don't need to hack anything. Use exactly what I told you. I'm a victim. I'm a genuine victim. And that's why I'm attracting agents. I'm attracting these weaponized morons, right? And I'm also attracting the clinical psychopaths. So what you can do is you just have to look. Already start with my comment section below the video. Look at what sort of accounts are posting, what's their symbolism, what are they trying to push, what are the things where they literally go mental. And this is beautiful because essentially there's something that Katherine Horton fits, who in my books is, I think, the cleverest woman on the internet, and I think people should really follow her, because in every single one of her interviews she says something very, very clever and insightful. Now, what she terms this rather well, I think, the shriek-o-meter. And she said that every single time something is, spot on, the shriek-o-meter, so the shrieks in the mainstream media are generally, the shrieks will just go through the roof. And that's essentially a wonderful telltale sign. And you can essentially I've got little shriek-o-meters in my own comments section. When I say something in my videos to a certain effect, look at the shriek-o-meter. Look at, first of all, identify all the bots. Try to identify the bots. Try to identify the agent accounts. And then look at what the agents accounts and the bots are shrieking. Because there are certain things that will come up over and over and over. And when I say, we should really go for court cases, there will be shrieks about other things. Like, oh no, you can't go to the courts because the courts are all captured. Everybody's captured. Well, capturing everybody is physically impossible. So that's nonsense, right? Of course, a certain judge can be captured, but another one might not be, or an entire section might not be. So it's certainly not true that the courts can be captured entirely, but nevertheless, these accounts will be shrieking it. So if you really want to have fun, right, with the data, as these people say, it's all about the data. And as these people also say, is if you don't have anything to hide, you don't have anything to fear. Now that's certainly true of the comment section below my videos. If you're a genuine victim, then there are ways to tell. There are ways to tell from the way you express yourself. There are ways to tell from the content that you say. And there's also ways to tell behind the bonnet about the times at which you post, at where you post, and at what speed you post. If you're posting at machine speed, you're not really a victim. But anyway, you don't even have to look under the bonnet. Just do your own data analysis, and I encourage you. Now look at the secondary. So the primary information is the videos I'm putting out. The secondary information in this Nazi hunt is the comments that every single one of my videos attract. Look at the messages, look at the profiles, look at the symbolism in the profiles, look at the content and the symbolism of the messages. Try to spot patterns and try to run your own deductive chains on that. It is priceless. Depending on who you are, if you're, someone who's just approaching this YouTube channel randomly and the only thing that you can do is actually read it, but you have a human brain, then you can do quite a lot. If you're, say, a skilled hacker, you can do even more, and you can have even more fun trying to hunt down these Nazis. Depending on, what sort of scripts or developer tools you might be running on, say, the YouTube platform, you can do many, many things, and you can have an awful lot of fun with this. Now, I encourage you to have fun. Please, not with my account. I don't need any more sabotage than I already experienced. But what you can certainly do is run data analysis, investigatory data analysis, and all the comments that are being posted. Remember, it is about the data. It is about the data in this war. It's about the data that these Nazi degenerates are leaking everywhere. So, that's point number one. This is concrete steps to take. Then continuing with communication, and it's just getting better and better essentially. We know that they are monitoring everybody's communication, and as Katherine Horton put it, they've got a one-way mirror. And that's again another one of these really beautiful images. It is a one-way mirror. Essentially, they are behind this one-way mirror. We can't see them, or so they think. We can't see them through that mirror, but they can know everything about us. They can anticipate what we're going to do next, and they can stay on board all of the time. In actual fact, it doesn't quite work like this. Yes, they do have like a one-way mirror, say at this level here, or maybe at this level here, but there's some people already on the inside who don't like what they're seeing, and they're also not entirely stupid. And then also, if you're at the top, you essentially can't control what four people are doing, so you can't really, and you know what, these guys are weaponized morons, so they're a bunch of idiots. Good luck trying to get idiots to work efficiently. I mean, I tried many times in my life, and I'm not anymore, right? So you're not really on to winner there. And remember that the people below your level are clinical psychopaths, so they don't give a shit. They're not gonna, burst a gut to work for you, are they? They want, if you're here, the clinical psychopaths below you want to be there. They don't want you to succeed. You have to understand that. So if you're at the head of an organization like that, you've got a really tough time, because the next tier down are essentially clinical psychopaths, and the next tier down are maybe some useful people, and then a bunch of morons. That's not really a winning strategy, is it now? So they do have a one-way mirror, but it's not that perfect. So you can do quite a lot of stuff, and then maybe this person is watching you and says, well done, right? Maybe this person watches you and says, ooh, that's really bad, but I'm really lazy and don't really care. Or he's just too freaking stupid to understand what you're doing. So all these things are, playing into it. So don't be discouraged just because they're watching. Remember that the people who are watching are idiots, and above them are a bunch of clinical psychopaths who don't really care about what you're doing below them. What they're caring about is how to topple the big boss, right? They are looking upwards, right? They are like clawing at his throne without him noticing. So it's not that bad, actually. But they are monitoring everyone's communication. And it was essentially the NSA whistleblower Bill Binney who made also a brilliant point. And essentially, sorry, I just knocked the table. What Bill Binney said is that, yes, they are reading everything that you're writing. They are monitoring everything you're writing in email and over the phone and in every single form of communication. And that's why you should always let them know what you think about them. And I have to dig out the actual interview and link it below, but I distinctly remember him saying that. Because it's true, they are monitoring what we're saying, they are monitoring what we're thinking, and they are also adopting a strategy based on what we think. So if we really think that what they're doing is utter bullshit and it makes us angry, you better tell them. If you want them to change, you should tell them. You should just make it clear that, yeah, this is it's bloody obvious now, right? It's obvious we're coming, and keep broadcasting it. And the more you broadcast, the more it actually registers in the system. And the more you let them know that really the game is over, the more they change their strategy to actual cooperation, you know, away from an actual, you know, illusion that there's anything to be won out of this. So it is true. Bill Binney is absolutely right. When they're monitoring all of your communications, you have to tell them what you think. You have to let them know. And by doing that, again, this comes down to it is a two-way street. By doing that, you get into their systems, because do you see, they are hoovering off everything from you, and essentially they are absorbing everything from you. So what you feed them is what they are going to absorb. So if you keep feeding them that that's it, game over, they will absorb that this is game over. Do you see? So that's why you have to. It is your duty to actually post this. And the other thing too, actually, I wanted to make another point. There's also a whistleblower called Carl Clark, and he went public in the German press in 2009, and he said, yes, it's true, the intelligence agencies are irradiating victims with microwave weapons and so on. And I can link that confession in the article in original German below this video. But what he said in that interview, which is something that I think he got the wrong way around, he says, well, the surveillance system is looking for certain keywords, for example, government and mind control and these sort of things, and therefore you should avoid those terms. I think it's the other way around. It's the other way around. If we know that these are the search terms that they are looking for, we have to swamp them with it. We absolutely have to. So next time your wife is grocery shopping, send her a text and ask her to buy another, I don't know, half a kilogram of Mossad, maybe, you know, or say that you would like to, you know, she should remember to buy Semtex, or maybe just cornflakes, you know, just spam them with this stuff. Put mind control, and actually another whistleblower said, actually this should be in our email signatures, you know, we should just take the keywords and put it in all our emails in the signature, like tags basically, you know, put them everywhere, in every single email. You should have the words government, CIA, Mossad, MI6, Semtex, bomb, terrorism, Saudis, money, and many, many other keywords that you can think about that you think are really topical. I think they should go into email signature, and every email you send should have those keywords in them. So remember, it is a two-way street, right? And the beautiful thing is that they are hoovering up absolutely everything that we're saying and doing. Okay, now the other thing is also, and this goes back to the gang stalking, for example, because even the gang stalking is a two-way street. They are, and also with the brain interference, by the way, when they're trying to map your brain and so on. So what they're doing essentially is conditioning. I mean, there's more sophisticated stuff as far as I can tell, you know, but ultimately what they're doing is brain mapping and looking for your responses. The gang stalkers are looking for your responses, the brain mapping is looking for your responses, and they're all trying to condition you and then look for your responses. Bottom line. Okay. Now, when you notice that, what you have to realize is, again, it's a two-way street and all the eyes are on you. So when you know this game, you can decide what you let yourself be conditioned on. In a sense, you can decide what you respond to. And I encourage you to try it with your gang stalkers. If you want to bring them very, very close so that you can make better photographs of them, of their sweet little mugs for posterity, then why not begin to respond in a really negative way, as if you were really upset and disconcerted. If one of these guys bumps into you or comes close, why not, if you really want to photograph their faces close up, you know, look like, you know, like really disturbed when they start to come close to you. Look terrified. Look utterly disconcerted, bothered. Come on, make an effort. Because they are watching you, you see. So if you become disconcerted and they're trying to make you disconcerted, then you can bring them close. Do you understand? You have to understand this is a two-way street and all eyes are on you. Do you see? So there are many, many ways. And yes, I have actually done that in practice. They do watch you. They do respond to what you respond to. And if you know the game, you can condition them to essentially do what you like. Do you see? So if you say you want to bring them close because you're photographing their mug, or you want to bring them all close because maybe there's some other investigation going on, then you can condition them to come close. And I encourage you to actually, think about this and think about how you can condition them by, showing the response that they want to see from you in a tactical manner. And I assure you, it works. Okay? And remember, the ultimate name of the game is, it is about the data. But this time, it's about the data on them. Do you see? So, wonderful. This is really shaping up to be a lot of fun. Yeah, by the way, I think they're also, sometimes they do try to communicate with me. Several times I had the impression that they were trying to tell me stuff, but I really struggle because I don't really speak Moron. But, if they try to communicate with you, you can also have a filter and, make them say things that, maybe are incriminating. So, for example, if you really want to record, say with a hidden dictaphone, a certain threat, why not bit by bit condition them to become threatening towards you? I encourage you to do that. If you want to find out how to, I did have a book on conditioning dogs. How if you want to teach your dog how to behave, why not buy books on how to teach dogs, okay, how to condition dogs to behave, and then think of something you want your gang stalkers or your surveillance team to do and try to make them do that by exactly the same thing. It's essentially like a reward system. So if their reward is that you look really bothered, then you can give this reward and, based on what they do, and then try to, bring them out. Have fun with it. Now, then comes an extra layer in this utterly messed up system when they are trying to monitor everybody's thoughts. And this is hilarious. This is where it gets really wacky, right? For example, if you're a victim of the intelligence agencies, all their agents will say, ooh, yeah, they're reading your thoughts all the time, and ooh, yeah, okay, wonderful. Yeah, okay. And then you also have literally pronouncements from people high up in the surveillance industry, and there was this quote, and I spent quite some time trying to track it down. I just couldn't find it via online search anymore, but I could have sworn it was essentially a woman who said that, if I remember it correctly. And it was either from, someone from the CIA or someone high up in Facebook, or I don't know, one of these surveillance tools anyway. And what the article was saying is that this person said, oh, by now we can essentially, we know exactly what millions of people are thinking live. Okay. Now, when you have these pronouncements, one of the things that you have to remember is that essentially speaking is for free, okay? So anybody can make these sort of pronouncements. But then also try to take a step back and have a think, if this is how it is, when these people go public and give these sort of speeches, imagine you could actually, monitor everybody's thoughts live as these speeches are being, held. What would it exactly look like? I remember this was a woman, so I'm not sure if it was the new deputy director of the CIA, or, as I said, somebody at Facebook or something, but, somebody like that. Okay, now let's assume someone like that goes public and gives a speech about how they monitor everybody's thoughts, and let's say you can monitor everybody's thoughts live. What would be the output, right? I imagine that, this person gives a speech and goes back to the mind hacking team, and it's like, okay, team, so what did you detect? And there would be a guy going right, well, what we measured is essentially a peak when we were doing the language processing and essentially trying to read out subliminal speech. We found a peak that was essentially centered on 4 words. And it's like, okay, so which 4 words are they? And it's like, one of the words was fucking. And it's like, Okay, well, you know, people swear quite a lot, and I guess they think about fucking quite a lot of the time, so not really surprising. No surprises there. So what was the next word? Well, the next word was degenerate. Okay, well, I guess a lot of things in the world are degenerate, and people will probably say so, so, you know, okay. So what was the third word? Well, the third word was Stasi. Stasi. I mean, that's kind of unusual, right? I mean, maybe in the German-speaking, did you sample from just the German-speaking area, or, you know, or other areas? And it's like, and no, we sampled several language regions at the same time. I mean, we had millions of people in this sample, so there's several languages included. So, okay. And what was the fourth word? Well, the fourth word was bitch. And so, okay, well, I guess fair enough, right? Because, you know, people do swear quite a lot. And is that the only thing that you deduced from this data set after I gave my speech? And it's like, I mean, to be honest, what was really interesting about this data set, and we did try to cross-check it with another team, you know, where we had a closer handle on the actual brain patterns. So, but we're still checking. But it seems to be the case that these 4 words were kind of like, they were kind of like thought of in sequence. Right? I mean, this is essentially what you would get. Right? Great. So what do you do with it now? Huh? You have the empire of bullshit running surveillance and bullshit, and then you monitor everybody's thoughts. Well, I think most of the time you will realize that people think, this is bullshit. Right? Now, if you genuinely can read everybody's thoughts, then I've got one question to you guys. Why is everything so shit? Because surely, most of the time people think, oh, this is shit, why don't they do that? So if you can read out the this is shit and then the why don't they do that bit, why don't you just do that? The stuff that's better. Why not? You can read everybody's thoughts. You can read out all the brilliant minds. Why is everything so shit? Why is it that the vast majority of companies on planet Earth are just shit? The vast majority of companies are actually underperforming. I mean, yes, they're making oodles of money, but they're not making as much money, and most importantly, they're not actually generating as much wealth, which is, as you might agree if you're an insider in finance, is a different concept from money. You can generate a lot of money and not much wealth, as we've seen, right? But why are these companies not generating more wealth? Why are they not generating the amount of wealth that they easily could? Why is that? Why is it that the vast majority of employees in these captured organizations work highly inefficiently? Why is it that they're really frustrated because they actually want to work more efficiently but they can't? If you can read everybody's mind, why can't you figure it out? It's so obvious. Why can't you make shit work? Just a question. So, and also, why exactly are things not just not very good? They're actually getting worse. I mean, the more you can read people's minds, the better you should be able to improve your systems, right? But you somehow can't seem to be able to do even that. It's not getting better. I mean, we have more and more mind reading, apparently, but we have shitter and shitter companies, and the general world situation and the environment and absolutely everything going shitter and shitter. So, what's the problem? What's the problem? Is there one? Okay. But anyway, these questions are very important to ask. And also, but especially when you're dealing with the intelligence agencies and so-called law enforcement. Right, well, when you're dealing with that lot, these questions are very important as well, because there's essentially you can also ask the same question. If you're that great and you've got access to that much surveillance tech and that much tech, why are things not improving? Do you see? I mean, why is crime, for example, not going down? Every single time you have more surveillance, we should see a definite step down in crime. And every single time, you know, all these companies, like, you know, read even more about their employees, there should be like a step up in wealth, not in money, in wealth. Why isn't there? Because wealth seems to be decreasing and crime seems to be increasing. So what the fuck's going on? I mean, how hard can it be with all this tech to actually fight crime? You should be able to fight it quite easily, should you want to. Now, if crime is not fought, it immediately implies they don't want to. And with they, I mean, as always, the intelligence agencies. Right? And this now brings us to the very, very core of this entire system. We essentially have, we have these incredibly extensive surveillance tools. We have a very large so-called law enforcement apparatus. We have the works. We just don't have the results. And now it's time to turn back to the intelligence agencies and look all these men straight in the eye. That's Mr. Andrew Parker, Mr. Alex Younger, Dr. Bruno Karl, and I forgot what the hell the name is of the guy who runs the Verfassungsschutz in Germany, and the head of the police, the Bundeskriminalamt. Sorry, these guys should be listed as well. And whoever the mystery person is who runs the head of the NDB, the Swiss intelligence agency. And we have to see them in the eye and say, why are women being mutilated? Why is it left to essentially civilians, right, with the odd, you know, scientists thrown in like myself to figure out, to reverse engineer military technology and figure out how these degenerates have been mutilating women? Why is it left to us? What are you doing? I mean, how hard can it be? I guess I did, you know, just by using Google and Twitter, I found out quite a lot. I mean, you could solve so much more by next Wednesday. Why are you not? Why not? Isn't it your statutory duty? Because I don't remember to have, maybe it's one of these secret, actual secret contracts or secret, you know, statutes or something that says that actually the main task of MI5 and the BND and all the others is to mutilate women and to traffic children and to sacrifice women and children and to have the odd assassination that's utterly idiotic because it's just going to activate more people who ask questions about the intelligence agencies. Is that the statutory duty? Because if it were, it would make a lot of sense. So yeah, and once we're on this topic, and this will lead me straight onto the actual next video I'm going to make, another question to ask the intelligence agencies alongside of why are these women, mostly women, but also a lot of men. So please, I'm not ignoring the men at all. I'm just saying that the ratio of women implies sexual violence, which can also be directed against men, okay? I'm not ignoring the men, the male victims of the intelligence agencies. Why are these people being mutilated? Why do they have experiments run on them that are so freakingly obvious? This signature, and this brings me back to the actual beginning of the video I made, when you just shoot somebody in the head and there's no traces. This is the most commonplace crime. There's no way to trace them back. When it's something quite so bizarre as nanotech and implants ending up in people, it is pretty easy to find out who has manufactured the nanotech, who has actually put them into people, and who reads out the implants. So when this is not done, you're in deep trouble. If you're in the intelligence agencies, you're in very deep trouble, because this essentially, there are so many tentacles on this, it leads us straight back. And not just that, this nanotech is only manufactured, it's not like you can go to Tesco and buy some, is it? So again, the more obscure, the more, you know, curious the crime, the more the clues point back to very, very few and specific places. And remember that crimes against humanity do not have a limitation period. And also remember that with the information flow in a networked society, information essentially ticks over at about 2 gigahertz, right? When you infiltrate people, when you essentially hook people on, say, pedophilia, to implant them in organizations, that might take years. And the information about that infiltration at the same time travels pretty close to the speed of light. So, on this note, I would like to finish with one question to the intelligence agencies, which is a question in addition to why women are being mutilated with advanced military technology, because you realize that kind of like leads us straight back. If satellites are really involved, then it leads back to data streams on satellites, data streams through phone towers, should these phone towers indeed be involved, or should just mobile units be involved with gang stalkers. They are leaking data left, right and center as well. And this data will have a certain signature inscribed in the log files. So, in addition to that, my final question to the intelligence agencies is just one, and this leads me on to the next topic. Where are the missing children? Where are the missing children? Thank you for listening, and bye for now.